Good afternoon, all of you. So, we are reaching the 10th part of the chapter Thermodynamics. And in this chapter, Thermodynamics, we came across a lot of concepts like internal energy, extensive and intensive properties, enthalpy, internal energy change, enthalpy change of a system, reversible processes, irreversible processes, the first law of thermodynamics, and finally, yesterday we studied about heat capacity. All these things we completed, and all this knowledge is very important for further when we move on to this chapter. So I hope you all are clear with all these concepts and the equations which we studied. So with all this knowledge, we are now capable to study about experimental methods. So today we will be studying about an experimental method to measure delta U and delta H, or change in enthalpy and change in internal energy. So basically it's a calculation of energy exchange. As you can see, one is change in enthalpy and one is change in internal energy. So both are somewhat energy exchange studies. So if we want to calculate energy exchange, from beginning we need to calculate work, or we need to see what is the change in temperature. So from beginning we were doing that. So either it should be study of work, or it should be study of what is the change in temperature. So those are the two methods to study energy exchange. In this method, we will be studying about heat exchange, and with that we will study about heat transfer process of a system. And this method of finding the heat exchange is known as calorimetry. So the word calorimetry, calorie means the energy or the heat energy, and metry is the study. So it is the study of exchange of heat and thereby measuring the delta U. That's what we are going to do first. So when we studied about the heat capacity, we understood that for a substance, temperature would rise only when its heat capacity is low. So if a system heat capacity is low, then when we apply heat, the temperature will increase. And if the heat capacity of a system is very high, exchanging the temperature is a bit difficult process. We have seen the example of sand and water in the last class. So with that concept, we will move on. So we can measure energy changes associated with chemical or physical process by an experimental technique called calorimetry. In calorimetry, the process is carried out in a vessel called calorimeter. So this is the vessel which we are going to do our experiment, and that method is known as calorimetry. And that vessel which is known as the calorimeter, which is a setup which is immersed in a known volume of liquid. Why a known volume of liquid we will discuss. So knowing the heat capacity of the liquid and the heat capacity of the calorimeter, it is possible to determine the heat evolved. So this is the basic idea of this experiment. So measurements in calorimeter are made by two different conditions. One is at constant volume and one is at constant pressure. The change in internal energy or delta U of system is studied under constant volume, and the change in enthalpy or delta H is studied at constant pressure. So first we will see at constant volume study of delta U, and the instrument which we are using here is known as bomb calorimeter. This is how a real bomb calorimeter looks like. So this is the main apparatus where we carry out our experiment, and inside this bigger vessel of steel we have a still smaller vessel which is made of steel, and that smaller vessel is known as the bomb. So this smaller vessel inside the bigger vessel is known as the bomb in the bomb calorimeter. We will see what are the other parts. So inside that small box we have our sample which is present, and the sample will be provided with oxygen through this oxygen inlet. So this will be connected to an oxygen cylinder, and through this inlet oxygen comes inside, but nothing from the sample goes out. So we want it at constant volume, so it is a sealed container, nothing goes or no matter goes outside. And other part is the firing lead. We can tell it's a lighter kind of thing. So firing leads are nothing but when we connect electricity here, it makes an electric spark here. So an electric spark is made inside the vessel so that we can ignite the sample. So here what we do is we ignite the sample and we are burning the sample. So if a substance want to burn, then it needs oxygen. So that's why we are supplying oxygen to the system. So we have kept oxygen inside the system and we are giving an electric spark through this firing leads. So obviously the sample will burn, and that heat energy which it burns is measured by the system. So how we measure it? Because we have kept the smaller container or our bomb dipped inside a liquid. So in the bigger vessel we have some liquid inside it. For example, we have kept water inside it and we have dipped inside the smaller container to the liquid. So entire the smaller container is dipped inside the liquid. So whatever heat exchange is done by the system will be with this surrounding or with this liquid. So we know the heat capacity of this vessel and that of this liquid. Then we can identify what is the heat exchange done here. So we are burning the sample with the help of oxygen and with firing leads. And if the process is an endothermic process, or if this system is accepting heat energy, then the temperature of this particular liquid will decrease, because that temperature taken by the system is from the surrounding or this liquid. And if the exothermic reaction is carried out, then the system will give out energy, and that energy also is accepted by the liquid. So when heat energy is accepted by the liquid, then the temperature of the liquid increases. So both the cases we can measure the temperature because we are connected with a thermometer inside it. So if it is an endothermic or if it is an exothermic reaction, we can identify the heat exchange which is done here. As we know the heat capacity of the vessel and that of liquid, we can easily find out the heat exchange carried out here. And what is this stirrer for? So this stirrer is actually like a blade of a mixer grinder, and it will be rotating slowly inside this liquid. That is because the liquid here should rotate or liquid here should move little bit. Then only this heat exchange will be done in an accurate manner. So if it is not moving, then all the heat will be accepted by this layer of the liquid. So that should not happen. The liquid near to this container should be changing. And one more thing is, with the rotation, work energy should not increase also. That's why the stirrer does its work very slowly, so that no work will be done inside, and we need this liquid to move also. So this is the apparatus of bomb calorimeter. And now we will see what is the equation which applied here. This we have learned earlier also. So relation between delta U and QV. At constant volume, QV is equal to delta U. How it was done? From the first law of thermodynamics, we have this equation, delta U is equal to QV minus P delta V. And here the work term or the P delta V term, when it becomes 0, by there is no change in the volume. As we told, there is no change in the volume. The work term will be 0. Hence this equation will become delta U is equal to QV. And at constant volume, yesterday we studied that QV, or at constant volume the heat exchange, is equal to CV delta T, and CV is the heat capacity of that particular substance at constant volume. So this equation we are applying here. Hence, we can tell Cv delta T is equal to delta U. As we know the heat capacities of the substances here, we can apply this equation here. So Cv, the heat capacity at constant volume into delta T or change in temperature. Both we are measuring and we are applying this in this equation and finding the change in internal energy. So that's the process here. And next is when the constant pressure is going on, we will measure the delta H or change in internal energy. This also we are doing calorimetry only, but in this case we need just a simpler apparatus than that of bomb calorimeter. Bomb calorimeter we had a sealed container, inside that again a sealed steel container. All those apparatus were needed because we were keeping the volume constant. But in this case we are not keeping the volume constant, we are not bothered about the volume. So in that case we are just keeping the atmospheric pressure constant and we are measuring the reaction mixture or a heat exchange in the reaction mixture with a thermometer. And the reaction mixture is kept inside a normal formed polystyrene cup. So inside a formed polystyrene cup, we are keeping the reaction mixture and we are measuring in a reaction what is the heat exchange. And that heat exchange is being measured by the thermometer. And as we know, delta H is equal to delta QP. This equation we have derived earlier. So at constant pressure, the heat exchange will be equal to that of delta H or change in enthalpy. And if we are telling it in a molar way, then we can also tell that this heat exchange or heat absorbed or evolved at constant pressure is also called as heat of reaction or the heat exchange carried out in a reaction. So in this reaction, the heat exchange which is carried out is also known as the heat of reaction or enthalpy of reaction represented by delta RH. So when heat is absorbed or evolved at constant pressure, it is also known as heat of reaction or enthalpy of reaction of the particular mixture. And when it is an exothermic reaction, heat is evolved from the system. So the system loses heat to the surrounding. Therefore, QP will be negative or the heat exchange will have a negative value. As system is losing energy or losing heat energy, QP will be negative and delta RH also will be negative or the enthalpy of heat will be negative. Enthalpy of reaction will be negative. Just opposite, if it is an endothermic reaction, heat is absorbed, so QP is also positive. Delta RH or enthalpy of reaction will also be a positive value. So this was a simple concept. So prepare notes by referring the textbook and submit it. Thank you.